Presented by Edge Radio.
Welcome to Media Shower on Edge Radio 99.3 M.
With your hosts of the most, Lochie and
Qom, how are we doing?
Good. I'm doing rather well, despite the fact I'm feeling a little sleep insomniac as of right now. But that's nothing out of the ordinary, if I say myself. But other than that, how about you?
Very good. It's we're back. We missed a couple of weeks.
Yeah, we've had
that's what happens with life.
Yeah, unfortunately, super duper co-host Qom unfortunately had a bit of a setback with the old sicky poos, if you will.
That's right. I think everyone's getting them.
Yeah, I think it's something to do with winter is coming and, well, that. And, of course, I think it's something to do with maybe another strain of you-know-what.
That's right. We were getting many calls, emails. People were showing up to my house saying, bring Media Shower back. We want Media Shower. Here we are.
I swear I even saw them bring some torches and pitchforks.
That's right, yeah. Not happy. But here we are. What have you been watching the last couple of weeks, Lochie? Anything good?
Well, I believe on this account, today's subject, we are going to be talking about an American sketch comedy group known as the Whitest Kids You Know. Now, that's the title itself, and the idea of the show, it's about a bunch of 5 young comedians who basically do almost like real-life Family Guy skits in a way, the most casual way I can describe it, if you will, but in the more edgier and clearly in the 2000s era of humor, with a lot more offensive and edgier humor, if you will.
Yeah. It's essentially a whole bunch of different sketches across every episode. They don't really link up in any way.
Not that I've noticed, no.
Yeah, very much like a Key and Peele or The Chappelle Show, which is an old one, or World Peace.
Or maybe even to one extent, that just came up to the top of my head as maybe like compared to like something like the Eric Andre Show, or what we previously talked about, the Nevada, the band, the show.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like it's got that very comedic, social experiment, quote unquote, along with a prank, of course, and of course wanting to see the crowd's reaction to see how all events unfold, if you will.
Yeah, so I was reading a little bit about them. They started as a live comedy sketch group that would just do different clubs and stage performances. And then they started in 2007. That's when they officially got their show. And it finished in the 5th season in 2011. And they've done some music between them. They've done music since then. They did a movie. And they've actually got another movie planned for next month's coming out.
Ooh, okay.
Called Mars. So this one's an animated movie.
Oh, animated. That's going to be an interesting approach.
Yeah, I thought that. I think they wrote the script and they did all the voice work, and they've kind of handed it off to a production company to do the rest. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'm not aware of the project. This is all new to me, but this sounds exciting.
Yeah, well, essentially the lead comedian Trevor Moore, he passed away around 2021.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, so he kind of had a resurgence. He did a lot of YouTube streams and things like that during the COVID pandemic, or they started off just before. And he was thrown off he was drunk and fell off a 2-story balcony and
oh, Jesus.
Kicked the bucket. I have a theory the CIA didn't want any more of this show, but
well, I mean,
I have no evidence for that whatsoever. If I did have evidence, maybe I'd get thrown off a balcony.
The humor was very 2000s and 2010s, and well, apparently these days, well, everything's different, of course, and a lot more social acceptable things have come through, which, of course, that always has led to one side where it's obviously come to good.
Yeah, it reminds me of kind of the South Park edginess a lot.
Yeah, almost like if they don't care who is offended by it, as long as they can either get people to laugh or they can get a point across.
Yeah, I think it's almost the running joke or the gag is how far we can push it. But yeah, I really liked it. It was one of those shows that I remember as a kid, staying up late and kind of watching. I think it was on SBS or Go when they had it. They'd have South Park Drawn Together,
Drawn
Happy
Together.
Tree Friends, and
That's
Whitest
another
Kids
classic.
You Know. Yeah, those kind of late night shows you have to wait for the parents to crash before you can watch.
Oh, I was actually not made aware of that. So, in fact, that you brought that to light is like now bringing back a floodgate of memories for me. It's like, times were simpler, weren't they?
It's
Well, one would say, if you know.
yeah, that's right. So you've enjoyed it so far, Lochie?
Well, I would say that I have been getting quite a good old chuckle out of it due to the fact that even despite the fact that I see the jokes and skits they make to be clearly, well, wrong, if for a lack of a better term, if you will, and yet I can still find ways to be either entertained or laugh my butt off. It's sort of similar with South Park, but as a different approach, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very absurd humor, if that makes sense. Like things that
Yeah,
you
very
just
absurd.
how did you think of that?
Or how would
A character being haunted and the ghost is just teabagging him and tormenting him for weeks on end. It's like it's hard to explain these jokes because they are so absurd and the characters are so insane. But little things like that, that's just insane. Why would you make it? Who gave these people a show?
Well, apparently somebody with keen intention to branch out these boys' comedic style.
Yeah,
Which
absolutely.
in turn, actually, I thought was a positive, but being that I don't know the full story, well, of course, with the cast, the crew, and the history, being the fact, and of course that I've only watched 2 seasons, it's like, it just gets me a little more invested in their careers, and, now that I've looked at that in a new approach.
Yeah,
It's a little funny to explain, but
I understand. It's to me it's a very nostalgic show, I guess. And I think that's kind of why I enjoy it so much. Some of the skits don't hit, some of them I think that's just it's whatever. But there's enough in every episode that I think there's kind of something there's always something for me there. And each sketch is probably only a couple minutes long at the most. And so you're always going to, if it doesn't hit, you move on to the next one, and the next one's probably going to hit,
yeah, it's one of those types of shows. The jokes for a lot of people are going to be very hit or miss.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, objectively is like, how do you do that nowadays, I guess? But
I think one of the great things for me is the music.
yeah, I forgot to even mention that. The music that they create during the episodes is ridiculously catchy. They're offensive and raunchy as hell, but I cannot help but just bong my head over and over again. Just how good the beat are, the lyrics are surprisingly clever, but yet still offensive, of course.
Yeah, I think on episode 2 they have a song called "Let's Wake Up the Neighbors," and it's just a heavy bass going as they're rapping about waking up the neighbors, and it's a catchy song. I'd put that on my playlist and listen to it. It's catchy. They're good beats. It's
It really is.
I'm surprised I know they did later do albums, or Trevor Moore did, and to me it's a surprise that kind of the music didn't take off as much as I thought. They're very meme type songs, but they're great.
Yeah, I was wondering, did they ever like consider making albums from the show?
Well, probably every episode has a couple songs, and then afterwards, Trevor Moore put out, I think, 2 albums
Oh, okay.
that were very similar style. And I guess they got a lot of views on YouTube, but not massive, you know.
Mainstream wise, you reckon?
Well, they didn't really go mainstream, and even within YouTube, like certain meme songs everyone kind of knows or hears about, that I thought, this probably should have been bigger or taken off, and for whatever reason it didn't.
But now I think when you say that, it comes into discussion of like, it's the topic of like, if you know type of situation.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of a cult classic, I guess, maybe, looking back on it.
And from only just being a recent viewer, I can see that it has some underratedness when it comes, for lack of a better term, again, for the show itself. And because it does have that very late night past Cartoon Network hours, or let's say, for example, like it feels very like it's got that Adult Swim, I guess.
I think
I'm not
maybe
sure.
Comedy Central picked it up in the later seasons.
Oh, well, that could explain it.
Yeah, and it's kind of very much similar to those other shows on Comedy Central. But I think,
Which I guess makes sense in return because you've got like the likes of, like you said, the Dave Chappelle show and much more.
yeah, absolutely. I think the first season they were able to release on one of those channels. I can't remember that, Fuse or something, some weird channel. And then by the second season, the publisher essentially said, we need to tone this down a little. This show is too insane. It's going to get us in trouble. Let's just pull the reins in. And they essentially said, we're leaving, this is outrageous. And they went to a different independent channel. And then I think later on, as it picked up more popularity, they moved to Comedy Central.
So I think I don't know if I've lost it, but see, they first picked up on it, thought, okay, that's not good. We want you to do this, and they completely standed their ground and be like, nah, we're gonna do our thing, and went to another independent company. And then as soon as Comedy Central noticed their fame, they were like, oh, can you come back, please?
No, it was a different channel initially. Comedy Central, I think they were almost the third company that picked them up.
Okay, I
That makes sense.
don't want to spread any false stories about any company misinformation or whatnot.
Yeah, I think it's one of the good things about these online platforms, though, is they don't have the same restrictions as TV. And so you can allow maybe edgier or more absurd humor. You kind of let it go. And, you don't have as advertisers, you're on a subscription basis, so, you can kind of do what you want without being restricted in the art. Does that make sense? But all of these episodes are on YouTube now.
Yeah, they've got an official channel where they not only upload all of their episodes in each season, they've got their commentary for each respective season, and I believe you said earlier that they had some other projects like a movie, and because I noticed that there was one kind of almost like building up one of their older skits based on old history.
Yeah, so it's called The War on Civil Drugs. So in season 5, the second half of every episode is essentially a movie.
Ah.
So it's like a segment from the movie. Like chapter 1 is the second half of episode 1 in season 5. Does that make sense?
Sounds a
So
bit like
they
weird.
took a movie, they split it up into like 15 or parts, and then they stuck it on the end of every episode for the season 5.
Sounds like some type of Pulp Fiction. compiling all the pieces in completely different order type of thing.
I think maybe they
that's
did
the
it
impression I'm getting
because
at.
they had the funding for the show, and they said, "Oh, let's just make a movie with the funding from the show and pretend that it's part of the show by slapping it on the end." So I watched it in kind of. I watched each episode and I thought, man, I can't remember I got a horrible memory. So I thought, oh, I can't remember what happened at the last segment of this movie. But they released just all those segments put together called The Civil War on Drugs, which is about movie length. And it's essentially that it's the premise that the American Civil War was about drugs and about the legalization of pot. And they're kind of swinging from each side as people are trying to kill them. They just want to get on the gun show while this horrible war is going around them. It's very stupid, but
Sounds like something I'll have
don't
to keep my eye
overthink
on.
it. Yeah. It's more just the premise so they can make stupid jokes throughout, I guess. I have no idea what the new movie is going to be about, but I think it's 6th of June, so probably less than a week away.
Oh,
It's being revealed at some arts festival or something over in America, and then we'll probably have to wait a couple months until we get the movie.
Now that you've mentioned this upcoming project, from what you know, are any of the current cast still doing any like projects, or have they moved on? Let's say.
Well, they were doing a show around the 2020, and it was called the Trevor Moore's Quarantine Show, and they'd all appear on that. And but really, since his death, they said this movie is going to be the final project, and then it's the end of the group. But they do Twitch streams and stuff like that. I haven't really seen any of them. There's stuff like you can watch Timmy cooking, which actually might be funny. I don't know. I read a list of their different Twitch shows the other day, and I thought some of these sound alright. Sam's Depression Show. I thought, oh my gosh, I don't know what that is, but what an interesting premise. They did a Dungeons and Dragons show for a while. With all of them together. I think I watched an episode 2 of that and I thought, it's as funny as Dungeons and Dragons can be. These guys meant to be going on some medieval quest and they're just stabbing one another repeatedly in the back. That sort of stuff, Trying to marry elves. But yeah, the new movie's Mars. That's what it's called. So we'll see. We'll probably come back and maybe do a review of that once it's out.
Well, I've got a lot of catching up to do when it comes to all seasons and now this big thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I don't know. It's like I said, the 5 seasons are on YouTube. Everyone should go check them out. If you're into like the South Park sort of humor or Family Guy, you'll probably really enjoy this. If you think those shows are
not your cup of tea,
Yeah.
then we wouldn't suggest it.
Probably don't show this to your grandma.
And only go in with it with a pinch of salt if that's not your cup of tea. Really.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely do not take these shows seriously.
Just like most of the shows that we've reviewed as of lately.
Yeah. I was trying to think, is there any funny bits that you really liked, Lochie?
Oh god, there was quite a lot of them that gave me even quite a bit of a stroke of a chuckle, if you will. The only way I can describe it.
I was trying to think of a couple of my favourite ones, or most memorable ones. I don't know if they're my favourite. But
The one that comes to my mind is the courthouse during opposite day.
Oh, that's a good one. That's really good, actually. So, I'll just lay out the premise. It's hard to describe these when they're so absurd. But essentially, this lawyer, he's in court, and his client is about to be sentenced. It's very obvious that he did the crime, which is like maybe a double homicide or something like this. And the lawyer gets up and he essentially tells the jury that it's opposite day. And of course, the judge starts screaming at them, it's not opposite day, it's not opposite day. But you would only say it's not opposite day if it was opposite.
It was, you know.
Yeah. And so...
So, taking full advantage of it, he just goes all out with the whole it's opposite day trope. And I couldn't help but feel like when that came up, it immediately caught me off guard.
Yeah, they do. Well, it continues. The other lawyer gets up and essentially tricks the jury into thinking that it's not opposite day in 3, 2, 1.
Jinx.
Yeah, and then the first lawyer plays Jinx on him, and then the judge says,
Oh, God.
order or something like that, and he says order at the same time. He jinxes the judge, and it's this lawyer running around just playing schoolyard games essentially.
Games in a courtroom.
Yeah. But I think that's one of the funny things about this show is the bits are never what you like initially expect them to be.
They are not.
They swap it out so much.
Especially when I first watched the first episode, I was not anticipating some of the jokes and how, I guess, well done quality they were at the time, and like how much effort they clearly put into it was like, even in my opinion, made it more funny. And it was like that they're so dedicated to it, and it was like
yeah, they seem to they keep going. You think you're watching one thing and then it swaps out to another. There's a bit in one of the later seasons where it's this grandma cooking up a pie for a family. And you think, what's going on? And then she serves the pie and she says, it's got my fingers in it. Ah! And it becomes a horror movie that she cooked her own fingers. And you think, what is going on? And then it cuts to it's a PSA about dementia. And they essentially say, oh, you know, are you sick of grandma cooking her fingers? Send her to us. We'll look after her. And pretty much the same way I said it, just very casually. We'll look after them, send them to us. I thought, okay. The other funny one that comes to mind is a lady's giving birth in a hospital. And at first he makes the joke. He says, no, push with your other hole. And then the doctors screams, we've got a runner. And it's like a scene from Alien. You see these lumps crawling all over her body as this baby's refusing to come out. And he pops out of her mouth for a little bit and goes back in. And then the doctor eventually has to saw her leg off to get the baby out.
I wonder what the purpose of that would have been for.
Well, you know, you get the baby somehow. And then it cuts to the lady walking out of the hospital with the baby sewn onto her leg, where her amputated leg. And you think, this is just getting more insane.
Reminds me of bloody Scuzzlebutt from early South Park.
And then it cuts to the lady and her husband as she's telling this story. And the husband just says, that never happened. We're getting a divorce.
Oh no.
Yeah, she's just gone insane. Don't listen to her at all, as they're telling this other couple. And it's one of those funny things that just starts one way and winds the other. And I think that's kind of a...
Yeah, and again, if it's like if you didn't like the first sketch, then you probably might jump to the next one and think it's an absolute chuckle buster.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things, I think comedy really is kind of the art of surprise. That's what comedy is you think it's going one way and bam, they hit you over the hammer with just absurdity or insanity. Or they start really absurd and then hit you with something serious, and you go, "Oh, I have no idea where that came from." And they seem to do that really well on this show.
Yeah, I agree. Like, like I'm sorry, I'm a little lost for words at the moment, but yeah, like I kind of would agree with you that it does have. I'm not even sure how to describe it right now.
They just seem to extend everything. You think, oh, that's a funny bit, and then they have 2 or 3 funny bits added on top of it. They really stretch them, but in a surprising way.
Yeah, and I think that all is dependent on how you approach certain types of sense of humor, and I guess, do you accept that or do you look the other cheek?
Yeah. It's, yeah, I'm a big fan. Like I said, it's very kind of 2000s comedy, I guess, the style. Very absurdist, very South Park-like. I think most people, probably young adults our age, or probably teenage kids maybe would probably like it. I have no idea.
Yeah, varies between the two.
Yeah, that's it. I think, yeah, I'm a fan. I think I'd recommend it to that sort of age group, or people who know they like that sort of humor.
Now you're starting to get me becoming a fan, so
Yeah, well, I recommended it to you, Lochie. You would suggest this to others? You like this?
well, being the fact that I liked it, that's a very difficult assumption for me to make when it comes to other people's opinions, because I don't know how they'll take one joke and then next to the other, if you will. So
Yeah.
the way I see it is that I personally just have to be a little careful when it comes to approaching certain sense of humors.
Well, our sense of humor is the best. We know what's best.
Well, only because
Everyone
we
knows
know
that.
what's best.
Yeah, it's not subjective. It's we're right, they're wrong.
Sorry, folks. Apparently, that's what has been said and declared.
Yeah. But yeah, we probably have to wrap it up here.